Shepherds of Men is a secular movement started by three men of faith. We wholeheartedly believe that when we get the men right, we get the world right. We believe this because we believe that men are created and called to be leaders, and we believe there is an alarming deficit of leadership in our world today.
And although the three of us have come from drastically different backgrounds, our core principles have given us a unified voice that is needed now more than ever to pave the way for a fundamental change in our culture.
We are quite literally calling men to something great.
Welcome to the movement.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're here with Mr. Larry Hagner, CEO and founder of the Dad Edge. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, man. And hey, it's good to be on here. That's not the first time somebody's butchered my name. It's actually Hagner. Like you're probably thinking of Marvelous Marvelin Hagler.
Oh
right?
my gosh, are you kidding me?
That's all
We're
right.
like 0 for 4 in the last 4 episodes. I'm not
Dude,
even
that's
kidding you.
okay.
Like this is like a trend with us.
Hey, listen, you didn't do what I did, and I did this. I think it was God. I'll never forget it, man. It was I think it was like episode 17. I mean, like I'm almost at 1,000 episodes, but I had Justin Worsham on the podcast, and he's a big time comedian, and he was like one of our first like kind of like really big guests in the limelight. But if you look at the way his spelling of his last name, and I didn't know much about Justin, I just know we booked him, and I didn't have a whole lot of time to really. I just knew he was a comedian, he was a dad, and that kind of thing. But if you look at the spelling of his name, it looked like Horseham. And that's the way I introduced him. And he's like, and like he was quiet during the intro because at that point in time, I was doing intros during the show. And he just started laughing. And I'm like, what's so funny? And then he's an improv comic.
Yeah.
And he just started railing. He's like, Justin Horseham, if your whore needs a ham at turkey time, like he just went off the rails. It was so funny. He's like, dude, it's Worsham. It's Worsham, not Horseham, and it was hilarious.
Makes total sense. Like,
Yeah.
Dude, I am so sorry. I swear to you.
That's okay.
And yours is easy, but I swear I had it just spelled wrong. I honestly just had it spelled wrong. And I've been following your stuff for at least a year and a half now. So my apologies. My last name is Brown. Feel free to say that however you see fit.
My mind went straight to Mr. Dumas.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Dumbass.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Shawshank Redemption shout out right there. Yeah,
Oh,
man. Or real quick, the other one that I get to all the time, if you guys grew up in the 80s, was the TV show Dallas, which JR doing was Larry Hagman. So I can't even tell you how many times it's been Larry Hagman and not Larry Hagner. So like,
I didn't butcher
don't
it
feel
that bad,
bad.
so.
It happens all the time.
Here's a little Hagner right here. What's up, buddy?
Yeah. This is my 8-year-old. This is Lawson. We're actually heading to the Smoky Mountains today after this podcast.
Oh, dude, you're coming to my neck of the woods.
Yeah, our stomping grounds.
Oh, no way. Really?
I'm in Nashville. He's in Chattanooga.
I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Yeah.
That's so crazy. I'm actually, so we're stopping in Nashville tonight.
Oh,
We should have just done this live.
oh, no.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next time. That's awesome. You guys stay in at a cabin or something for a little while?
Yeah. So we've got we got an Airbnb in the Smoky Mountains. A client of mine, a one-on-one client of mine, he's a business owner and he owns a few Airbnbs, and we were just kind of chatting one day and we were just kind of chatting one day.
He's like, we're loaded up, Dad. We're ready to go.
Right. So he's one of my clients and he had a few Airbnbs, and I told him, I was like, yeah, we're heading to the Smoky Mountains at some point. He's like, dude, I got a cabin there. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, I'll give you a deal on it, man. I'm like, what date you want to go? And so we locked it in. So it's pretty cool.
Go.
Yeah, we get a hot tub too.
There you go.
Oh, you can't go to a cabin in the Smokies and not have a
No
hot
way.
tub.
Especially in the summer.
I know, right?
Absolutely.
They're so fun in the summer. So you got 4 boys, right?
Last time I counted anyway.
Right.
Last time I
They keep
counted.
sneaking in the house.
I know there could be more. They just keep coming in like an assembly line.
If yours are like mine, they bring extras every now and then. I look around and I'm like, how many people are we feeding around here?
Oh, dude, it gets crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah, like neighborhood kids and everything start
Yeah.
hanging out. Like, I don't even know which ones are mine.
Does it matter?
It doesn't
matter?
really. It really
It
doesn't.
doesn't
You know,
matter.
and it is kind of cool. I mean, there's a part of me that's like, I've got 3 boys, no girls. JP's got 3 boys and a baby girl. So we got a lot of little dudes running around. But we do have, so I've got like my youngest is 4, then I've got a 6-year-old and a 16-year-old, which is my stepson. But he's got a couple little teenage buddies that are always here, you know? And there's times where it's like, you feel like, okay, I need a little, like some breathing room. Like we need to get a couple of kids out of the house. But then my wife reminds me, like, you know, especially the one for sure. And then the second one, a lot of times too, is like, they don't have dads, you know, and one of them barely has a mom, really doesn't have a mom. He's here because he stays at his grandma's house. And it's like, you know, you think about it for a minute, like, dude, the least I can do is trying to fill some kind of role there and give them a place to come hang out, you know, and feed them every now and then. So my wife has a way of straightening my perspective for sure.
You know what's so cool about that though, and you know, we're talking about the topic of like fatherhood, marriage, and all this other stuff too. But man, there's something key about that. My wife and I, we live in one of our core values is environment, and another one of our core values is deep human connection. So, you know, one of the things we've done is we bought the house that we live in right now specifically for that reason. We're like, we want to create an environment where our kids want to bring their friends here and nowhere else. So on any given weekend, I'm not even kidding, we easily will have sometimes 12 boys in our house. Like, and we're feeding, like, Domino's, I think, knows us on a first name basis at this point.
Right.
But I think that that's really cool because, like, I love the fact that my kids' friends tell my kids that they're like, man, I love being at your house. It's always so much fun. Like, it's always so easy. It's always so comfortable. That's like one of the biggest compliments that I could possibly ask for, is that your house is the place where we land. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not overwhelming sometimes. And sometimes you're like, God bless. Sometimes I just want like our own people here, like our own family here. But I also love the fact, because I know that these days are fleeting and you just got to embrace it. Right. And I think our kids, like, they really appreciate hearing that from their friends, especially later on in life. Like, man, my house was the one where everybody landed at, you know, at the end of the day.
Well, and in a bit of a selfish way for us, it's like it's easier for me to know they're safe and kind of what they're doing, especially as they get older.
Right.
You know, so yeah, I get that for sure. 100%. Not always easy, but probably better than the alternative. No doubt. So JP, your house is like that too, because I know but yours are smaller. Like you got all the like 2-footers coming over to your house.
Yeah, I got 2 that are in diapers right now, and then a 6-year-old and a 13-year-old. So stay pretty productive in my house. I told my wife, I said, I don't know if it's the kids or if it's just us, but I've never seen human beings produce trash at a rate like what we do.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's one of the weirdest things. Like every single day I pull a bag of trash out every single day, and I'm like, how does this happen?
Domino's boxes alone, right?
Right. Well, I looked at that a little bit differently, like what you just said, like, and both of you are right, you know, as far as, you know, your kids being safe and your kids wanting to be at home and the times are fleeting, you know, and enjoying those moments and stuff. But, you know, growing up, and what's intriguing to me about what you're doing, Larry, is I was that, you know, that kid that grew up, you know, without a father in the household, like the single parent, you know, kind of household. And I was the one that went to other friends' houses to kind of see what it looks like. You know what I'm saying? Like, kind of wanted to be at other people's houses because either their dads were funny or their dads were engaging, or their dads, like, you could see and feel the love from their dad that I didn't necessarily have. And I didn't even realize that I was doing it for reasons like that. But for me, the way that I look at it now as an adult, you know, having kids is, you know, there are a lot of kids out there that are looking for that. I think the last statistic that I saw was something, you know, sickening thing, like 33% of households have kids being raised without their biological father being present, you know, and stuff like that. But, you know, for me, I look at it and say, well, any way that I can step up, and I know Cam, we've had this conversation several times, there's kids in his neighborhood that don't have fathers or parents in general present, that it's just a duty, right? You know, like, as a man, it's kind of a duty for him. That's like, you know, and not in a purely like, hey, here's some snacks and stuff so that you don't die. But lessons in life, you know, things that these kids need to understand and need to learn early on to, you know, avoid some of these pitfalls. So.
Agreed, man. Agreed. And so you have 4 as well.
I do.
Ooh.
Yes.
Yeah. I think people
y'all know what causes that, right?
Yeah.
We figured it out. We're done. We're done.
Just making sure everybody's, you know,
I'll tell
Larry's
you,
going to the Smokies this weekend. I don't know.
I'll tell you what's crazy though. Going to that third one is really, really a big difference. It's really big.
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
That's when you start playing zone defense, and once you get outnumbered, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Yep. So, Larry, I want to ask you a few questions, especially for people that maybe not as familiar with your movement and what you've been doing. I started digging into your stuff. We started Shepherds of Men probably 2.5 years ago ish, and I was very much personally off of social media for about a decade. Like I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was very much okay with living in my own world and not worrying about everybody else's. When we started this, it was me and JP and two other friends, both named Chris. And it became very apparent. They were like, dude, you gotta get on social media. I mean, it's kind of necessary if we're really going to reach people. I was like, all right. So I did that. And then obviously with our mission here, which is foraging influential men, I immediately wanted to be like, okay, I want to dig into as many other guys that are in this same space, and you were one of the first that I found. And I don't remember exactly how, but just started digging into your content. I remember you put out, it's been a while back, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago at least, you put out an email thread with some marriage stuff. I don't remember, you would know the name of it, but some marriage tips and helpful things. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit. But other than that, I've listened to a number of your podcasts. I've watched a lot of the stuff you're doing on Instagram. I love what you're doing with your son, or what you have done recently with the bodybuilding. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about why you started the Dad Edge, or I guess the Good Dad Project, as it was originally called, and kind of what the mission is for that now.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked, because I actually have. We had a guy in our Dad Edge group on Facebook. We have about, I don't know, 20,000 guys or so in that group, and we go through sometimes, I would say, very short seasons of guys who are very fiery, and I would say even like troll-like behavior. And we're good at identifying those and removing those, right? Um, but I had a guy who chimed in and put a post on our group. He's like, it's clear to me that I don't think Dad Edge has a vision or standards.
Oh,
Which so let me give some context of why he said that. So we just went, as we're speaking right now, we just went through I would say the past 2 weeks of, like, we had, and we've seen this before. It's happened before. It just is what it is. People just, I don't know if they just get so freaking bored with their own lives they have to go troll in and troll other people's groups and that kind of thing. But what they do is, and there's actually groups dedicated to this, that they will actually go in and troll other groups, and they'll put up crazy ass posts, or they'll do something that just wants to trigger. And what they do is they actually go in and then they take screenshots of people commenting and flying off the rails, and then they go post it in their group, and like, hey, look what I'm doing here in Dad Edge. Look what I'm doing here in Dad's at Lift. Look, it's ridiculous. Like, sometimes I'm just like, really, how do you have that much time? But I'll share with you how Dad Edge got started. But first, let me just share the vision and the mission with you guys real quick. Here's the vision and mission. Millions of men, husbands, and fathers walk the earth with little to no direction on how to elevate their marriage, connection with their kids, or their business and health. Too many men are drifting and not living. Most men will take their best moments, their best ideas, their best intentions, their best connections with their family to their grave. And the Dad Edge is here to change all of that. Our community of men helps help men create an extraordinary marriage. We help men with direction to cultivate a connection with their wives that is second to none. We help men establish boundaries for self-care. We help men create roles and partnerships within their marriage. We help men redefine what it means to have meaningful friendship with their wives. We help men elevate passion and frequency and intimacy of sex. And at the end of our lives, men will not die with any regret. They will smile and know that their marriage was on point and in line with their vision and everything that they possibly wanted. We also help men create connection with their kids. We teach high quality connection by cultivating an environment of psychological safety. Men will achieve a lasting connection with their kids, and memories will be created that will be so impactful for him and his kids that they will never forget it. He and his kids will be on their deathbed reflecting upon the amazing connection that their dad made. Men will elevate their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Men will have a place to unpack life's challenges and obstacles, and they will stay in the valleys of life for a short period of time and be lifted out of the seasons of hell through the support of this group. Men in Dad Edge Alliance are creators of leaders of men, leaders of families, and leaders of communities. We will change the divorce rate from 50% to 40% over the next 10 years. We will save families that otherwise would have no hope. We will not only impact the generation of fathers, but the next generation as well. The kids that we are raising will have better chances and odds stacked in their favor because of the amazing example their fathers emulated for them. We are here to change the world. We are here to change relationships. We are here to positively disrupt this generation of fathers so no man has to go to their grave with regret. We disrupt the drift of busyness and replace it with razor focused intention, passion, purpose, and direction. We are Dad Edge, and we're here to change the game. That's our vision.
Dude, I love it. I got goosebumps. And I'll tell you something that, and this may sound weird to some, but the thing that stood out to me, anybody can write some stuff down and say it and get all hyped and make it sound cool. But it was something that was very telling to me as you were going through that, as you said, we'll change the divorce rate from 50% to 40%. If you were all hype, you would have said like 20% or 10% or something like that, because it's not realistic. But in the next 10 years, I know how serious you are about actually accomplishing that goal, because you put a realistic, something that'll be a stretch, but it's attainable. So that's awesome, man. I think our mission statement's like a sentence, so maybe we got to up our game a little bit.
Well, I actually wrote that. I hired a business coach about 2 years ago, and I had kind of a mission and vision that I formulated. And he instructed me. He's like, "You got to get deeper with this one." He's like, "Because I know he's known me for a long time." He's like, "I know Dad Edge," and he's like, "And this is a surface level vision." He's like, "You got to get like, I want to hear your heart and soul and everything that you got behind this mission. What do you got?" And he said the same thing. And you have to make it realistic. And you're right. Like, I mean, for me, like if we could actually decrease the divorce rate by 3%, to me, that's a win. The big audacious goal is 10, right? But going back to your question, how did Dad Edge get started? I mean, if I'm being real, it probably started way in my childhood. I mean, I had a crazy, crazy upbringing. My mom and biological father were married in 1971. I was born in 75. After I was about 9 months old, my dad left. They got divorced. My mom and him were like kids when they got married. And he was only 25 years old when I was born. And after I was born, he left. My mom and his divorce was really bitter. So I think that he thought at the time that was probably the best possible thing to do. When I was 4, up until that point, I'd only been raised by my mom, but I knew what a dad was. I went to preschool. I remember dads coming in and picking up their kids from school. So I knew what a dad was. I saw dads all the time. I just knew we didn't have one. Didn't have any pity on myself or anything like that. And at that 4 years old, what I thought, right before birds and the bees, was moms go out and they find dads. Like kids magically appear and they go out and find dads. My mom hadn't found my dad yet. So the very first time my mom ever brought home a guy was when I was 4. And she'd been dating this guy from work. He was a data software engineer, white collar guy, wore a suit to work every day. And my mom told me, she's like, "Hey, I want to invite a friend of mine over for dinner and I want you to meet him." So I'd never seen a male figure ever walk into my house. And in my mind, the first thing that clicked was, could this guy be my dad? Did she find my dad? And so this guy comes over to my house. I'm 4 years old, and I'll never forget. It's the first time a male presence ever came into my house. And he was in a suit, 3-piece suits, 1979. He's got the double Windsor tie. He's got the feathered hair, the mustache. He's got the briefcase. Walks in, shakes my hand, and the first thing I ask him was, "Are you going to be my dad?" That's the first question that spewed out of my mouth.
Pressure, bro.
And yeah, I think this guy probably wanted to leave at first, but they did get married, and they stayed together till I was 10. And what I can tell you without going into a ton of detail, it was an absolute shit show for the most part. I think what my mom did was, and God bless her for having the best of intentions, but I think she took that as like, man, I really do need to complete this family. And I don't know if I love this guy, but he seems good enough. Maybe I'll just go ahead and marry him, right? My kid seems to like him. And their relationship just deteriorated year after year. to the point where he drank so much, my mom drank so much, they fought physically, mentally, emotionally. I was beaten, strangled, dragged, punched, thrown down, all kinds of crazy crap. He left and they got divorced when I was 10. Haven't seen him since. I found out about 7 years ago he died. And so at that point in my life, I started asking a lot of questions like, wait a second. I remember this guy coming into my life when I was 4. Where the hell did I come from? So I asked my mom, and I'm like, hey, where did I come from? Like, obviously, I wasn't his. And she's like, well, I was actually married before. I had no idea. She showed me the wedding album. I was like, oh my God. So I knew his name and had no clue anything else. Well, when I was 12, I accidentally ran into him. And just for the sake of the time crunch that we're on, I won't go into how, but we met. And that relationship, he was remarried at the time, 2-year-old son, another one on the way, and our relationship lasted 6 months. And I was so overjoyed that my dad had come back into my life. I immediately started calling him dad. He came to my little league games. I saw him every week for like 5 straight months, and I thought life was freaking awesome. He only lived 2 miles from us, so that was kind of cool. And I noticed something changing with my dad over time where he just felt stressed and overwhelmed. And I finally picked up the phone one day at 12 years old and I'm like, hey, man, like, what's going on? Like, is everything okay? Like, I just feel like something's off. And he basically said, it's me, it's not you. This is a bad time. We need to go our separate ways. And that killed me. And so my dad left twice and I gave up on school. I overate, became a fat kid, failed the 8th grade, was bullied and picked on and all that other good stuff, but just like literally just gave up. Did 8th grade over again, went on to high school, college. My mom continued to date, several disastrous men. All of them had alcohol issues. All of them had partying issues. All of them were abusive. My mom was married a total of 3 times by the time I was 18. Now I'll finish the story here. When I was 30, 2 things happened. I had already went through high school, graduated college, went on to a successful career in medical and pharmaceutical sales. I had a standing meeting with my sales team every Monday at a Starbucks here in St. Louis. 30 years old, married, first kid on the way. Sitting there having my meeting and look up and look over and noticed someone had came in to get their morning coffee. And who was it but my father, the one I hadn't seen since I was 12. And one of the women that I was with on my sales team noticed that I seemed really preoccupied. And she's like, are you still here? You just seem like you're off in La La Land. I'm like, I'm sorry. I was like, my dad just walked in and he's right over there. And sorry, I'm just having a hard time focusing right now. And she's like, hey, wait, time out. What? And I told her, she's like, wait, you haven't seen that guy since you were 12? I was like, yeah. And she's like, what are you gonna say to him? I was like, nothing. I'm 30. Like, I'm a grown man. He didn't want to be a part of my life. Why would I go up to him? Without saying another word, she went up to him, sat down next to him, started talking to him. And I was like, what the hell's going on here? What is about ready to go down? I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could read his lips. And I saw my dad say, where is he? And he looked around and our eyes met. And I'm just like, oh my God, I haven't seen this guy in 18 years. What the hell's about ready to happen? Stands up, comes over, shakes my hand. He's like, hey, how are you? Like, how's your life? And I'm like, fine. How are you? Like, I wasn't nice, but I wasn't a total ass. I was kind of like right in the middle. That interaction led to now 17 years we've had a relationship. I have 2 younger half brothers. He's still married to the same woman. I make my dad sound like a bum. He's not. He's actually an incredibly successful business owner. Raised 2 great young men. Unfortunately, I wasn't a part of that. But here's how Dad Edge gets started. My entire childhood was filled with chaos. And when I got married, I was like, I'm going to be married one time. And when I'm a dad, I'm going to freaking do this right. I'm not going to beat my kids. I'm not going to do this. 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 Well, having a laundry list of things that you're not going to do is not good enough. And I had to learn that the hard way. I don't know about you guys, but the last time I went to Lowe's and bought a barbecue pit and I opened up the manual on how to put the thing together, it didn't give me 100 ways of what not to do. It gave me gave me exact directions on what to do. So Dad Edge got started out of a very dark moment. And that dark moment happened when my oldest at the time was 6 and my youngest was 4. We didn't have the other 2 at the time. I had I was in this mode of like my marriage wasn't that great. It was mediocre at best. We weren't really communicating that well. We weren't really having passionate sex, intimacy, like connection. that really wasn't happening. I didn't have a whole lot of patience with my boys. I got all my validation in my work. I dove into a ton of work. And my really stupid, idiotic perception of fatherhood, I didn't know this then, but I know it now, is like being your dad is super important to me. And if I don't get too close, I can't screw it up too bad. Like, that's really stupid. And that was my stupid perception. Like, if I do fatherhood from a little bit of a distance, maybe I won't screw these kids up too bad because I feel really screwed up. So one day, my 4-year-old, I had an incident with him. And this is where things got really dark. I had never put my hands on my kids in anger, ever. On the day that Dad Edge got started, I lost my biggest customer in medical device sales. And I knew it was going to impact my income for the next year. I was scared I was going to lose my job. I had a whole lot of other pressures with my marriage and everything going on. And we were packing up, getting ready to move. Packing up my kids' playroom, spent 3 hours packing up all their toys. My 4-year-old comes down, who's 14 now. He's the one I did the bodybuilding show with. And I told him, I was like, I'm going to take a break. I was like, I left some toys out for you. Dad's already packed up a bunch of your toys. Please don't get anything else out, but you can play with these. Well, I left for 30 minutes and came back. And what do you think a 4-year-old's going to do? He got out all kinds of stuff. And out of a fit of rage, I spanked him. And some people are on board with spanking and some aren't. I'm not here to fight that fight, but I just didn't want to do it. And I certainly didn't want to do it out of anger. Unfortunately, I hit him so hard that he lost his balance and he hit the ground. And that was the first time I struck my kid, and I hit him so hard that I didn't realize what I was doing. And I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? And immediately I knew. I was like, what in God's name just happened? So I went to help him pick him up. And the kid freaking shuddered with his hands up like this, like, please don't hit me again. And dude, that was 10 years ago, and I still have a hard time talking about it because I still see his face. And the monster that I always swore to protect my kids against was the guy that I became. And I knew in that moment, things had to change. And that's when I was like, I'm done living this life. You know, and that night I created Dad Edge, and it wasn't out of like getting a following or a podcast. It was a Facebook page. And all I did was start a page, and I was like, I'm going to go out and learn something new every day about what it means to be a better father, a better husband, more patient, more communication, all this stuff. And I'm just going to post it right here just so I have a record of it. And that was the origin of Dad Edge. Had no clue 10 years later, this is what it would be, but it wasn't always pretty, but that is the origin of it.
That's a pretty amazing story. JP, I feel like maybe you have some things you want to comment on, because I know you can probably relate to a lot of that.
Yeah. So very similar. My dad kind of disappeared before I really knew who my dad was, you know, and not throwing mistakes or I guess for me, kind of, I was similar to like what you were talking about. Like, I just chalked it up as I didn't have a dad. I wasn't kind of tore up about it or whatever it may be. It was just never really knew, you know, my dad from the very beginning. Now, I did not meet my dad again until I was 34 years old. So, but, you know, and part of it, you know, listening to your story, you know, having that trauma of dad coming back, getting the excitement, enjoyment out of it, and the, you know, the high from that, like, all right, and then disappearing again, would have been, you know, pretty severely detrimental. You know, I just kind of spent my entire life, you know, just kind of trying to accept the fact that, you know, my dad wasn't around. I mean, he's around now, you know, but I had a different relationship, you know, than you know, my dad obviously wanted to, you know, rekindle and was like, hey, look, I love you. I've always loved you. I've always cared about you, blah, blah, blah. You know, and for me, and I believe that he meant it deep down in his heart. He just wasn't, you know, he didn't know how to be responsible and stuff like that. You know, early on, in him and my mom, whatever the issue was there, I'm not going to go into detail with that, obviously, but I struggled to, like, you know, call him dad, you know, do all those things, because I didn't have that, you know, kind of connection. And what's cool about what you said that I would agree with 100% is I had the exact same epiphany whenever I got a little bit older. Is I will get married one time, and I will be a present father. Not a perfect father. I didn't use the P word perfect. I will be a present father, and I will own up to my mistakes. And one of the biggest things that I wanted to do with my kids is let my kids understand that your father's a human, right? Like sometimes we miss the fact that our kids will put us up somewhat on a pedestal and look at us and go, oh, I could never be like them, especially when they're small. They're like, oh, he's big and strong and smart and this and that, and I can't even read and stuff. And sometimes they get overwhelmed with a lot of that stuff. And one of the things that I really wanted to make sure that I did, and you said intentional, which is a very important word for Cam and I as well. And we call it definite a purpose is what we like to say, especially with what we do. But one of those things where you get down on a knee, and when I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong. Like, even if it means they get in trouble, I discipline them for being in trouble, and then come to find out maybe it was a misunderstanding on my part or something like that. The first thing I want to do is go apologize and say, you know what, Daddy made a mistake. Daddy shouldn't have done that. I made a mistake, whatever it may be, because I don't ever want my kids to feel disconnected or abandoned per se from me. And I think sometimes maybe I overcompensate for that because of the abandonment issues that I've had from the past, because that stuff sticks with you. And what I realized just recently was I suppressed that so much that I convinced myself it wasn't a problem. And then when I started to realize that trauma actually was a problem and I just wasn't facing it, I started to realize all the effects it was having on my life, like my relationships with men. I struggle with relationships with men. And Cam can attest to this, and everybody that's listening has probably heard this multiple times, but, hugs, affection, things of that nature towards men, and not in a homophobic kind of way. For me, it's like, I don't want to get close to guys because I feel like they're just going to leave. And it's a subconscious effect on my mind from abandonment issues in my past. So it's really cool from an enlightenment standpoint to start to realize that, because then you can fix it. But I want to make sure that my kids never feel that like Daddy's got everything else that's way more important than me, because that's also a form of abandonment, right? Like I'm there, but I'm not present.
Yeah, I would say first of all, thanks for sharing that, man. I'm sure your audience got a ton of value just out of that alone. And you're right. The interesting thing is that, we try to be the dad, especially if you come from that background, right? We try to be the dad that we didn't have, right? Because we know firsthand how freaking horrible that feels. Like it's a wound and a pain that just aches. And to be quite honest, it like aches for a lifetime, right? And there's no remedy for that, really. I mean, there is. You can do the work, and you can go to counseling, hire a coach, get through it, right? And it's a good learning tool, but there's still that part of you that's wounded. But I don't think it's a bad thing to be very aware of when you misstep as a father and then you own it. Like, I mean, dude, I've had to do that. Like, I feel like sometimes I'm the poster child of sometimes apologizing to my kids, and because I do. But here's what the cool thing is I'm sure you've probably seen this in your 13-year-old. I'm seeing this in my 16 and 14-year-old, is that when they do something wrong, they don't blame. They don't point the finger. They own everything, to the point, like my 14-year-old just got caught. He's never had a problem with grades ever. And he just got caught cheating in school. And I was blown away that he got caught cheating. I was like, cheating? I was like, why would you need to cheat? And what happened is when he and I did this bodybuilding show, I pulled him out of school for 3 days, and he fell insanely behind in his work, and he was scrambling to get his assignments done on time. So he went to a buddy and he's like, hey man, like, can you help a brother out? Like, can I see your Chromebook? Let me just see the answers you got for these answers, or the answers for the couple questions. I need to get this in. And he got caught. And my son came to me just devastated, in tears. He's like, I got to tell you something. And I got to tell you something that's hard for me to tell you. And I feel like you're going to be mad at me and in trouble, and you're going to be disappointed. And he told me exactly what happened. And he's like, and this was my fault. And when the teacher asked me about it, I told him this was me. This was my choice. And don't blame this other kid that I got the Chromebook from, because I asked him for it. I begged him for it. He did it just out of obligation. But it was me. It was my fault. And he got detention and everything. I did not punish him. I was like, I'm not going to punish you. In fact, I applaud your courage for telling me. And there's some gems in everything that you did. You could have been like, oh, it's the teacher's fault. she didn't communicate the deadline to me. She didn't send me the assignment, right? She knew I was going to be out of town. She didn't send me the assignment. Like I didn't have enough time. It was time's fault, right? It was this fault, that fault. Nope. He's like, this is all me. So I think that I think our kids learn a beautiful lesson in what you just talked about, which is ownership. Like if you can own as a dad, like you're the guy, right? You're the hero. And if you can own like, hey, I made this mistake. Here's everything I did wrong. And here's what I'm going to do to make it right. That is a beautiful freaking lesson. Lessons, the most powerful lessons are caught, not taught. And if that's what you're doing, guarantee you'll see that in your kids as well if you haven't already.
I love that we're talking about this. One of the ethos that we teach is integrity. And I think oftentimes we don't really comprehend the full meaning of that word. I know probably a year or two ago, we had a guest on that helped us really focus more on structural integrity when we're looking at that word. But I just think about what your son did, and I applaud you for not punishing him, because that would have been the same call I would have made, because I know for him to come to you in that manner humbly was way harder than any kind of punishment you could have ever put on him. And it's true. Like you should be proud of him. Like you're not proud of the action, but you understand that he made a bad decision. So like it sounds maybe a little counterintuitive, but like true integrity doesn't mean you're flawless. It just means that when you make mistakes, you own up to them. You take extreme ownership, as Jocko talks about. And dude, we've all been teenage boys, and I know y'all had different experiences, with your relationship with your fathers during that time. I was fortunate enough to have a great father. I can tell you from experience, when I messed up, to go tell my dad, who I respected like immensely, was one of the hardest things ever. Like, just like, it's that whole thing you hear about, like it's worse for him to say I'm disappointed than to actually spank you, because he means so much to you. So, and I have no doubt that you have earned that with your kids. So man, that says a ton about him, but it says even more about you as a father. So
thanks, man.
Kudos, brother. Y'all got me all choked up over here talking about all this.
Well, yeah, and I think that you have an outstanding point, with everything that you said there, because ultimately it's not like, obviously, and to Cam's point, the lesson learned was the ability to confront the mistake and come out and be honest about the mistake, and the lesson learned there is far greater than the lesson that he would have learned if you would have punished him, right? Like you would have grounded him or taken something away or whatever it may be. And that's one of the things that I talk to my kids about, not just my kids, but also other clients of ours, because, we always get the, oh, well, you're Christians and stuff like that. How can you do this or that or whatever? And, and one of the things that, as a human, you're not going to be perfect, and you never will be. Like, don't expect to be perfect, but there's magic in being convicted. And the thing about it is, when you screw up and you're convicted, that shows a level of integrity within you, because you respect yourself enough to not allow that to be okay. And then you can come, you can be truthful about it. And I think conviction really starts to develop a certain level of being genuinely who you are. When you start to really understand who you are, and you've got your core principles and your character ethics where they need to be at and solidified, that conviction is stronger than ever. And that's how you don't keep repeating the same stupid things. But when you do mess up, you say, hey, that was on me. That was my fault. That was poor judgment on me. But because I'm owning it, I can fix it.
Absolutely, man. That it couldn't be more dead on. And I honestly think, man, if we could teach, even if it's just that one lesson in society, like right now, of the beautiful things that happen when you own even your biggest mistakes, or even the smallest ones. Think of how that one thing could make a shift in the world.
Huge. I mean, we have a true pandemic of an epidemic of people, deflecting. Like, I didn't do that, or I did it because, or whatever. If it wasn't for this, that wouldn't have happened with me. And it's like, man, as long as you're literally like sacrificing control of your life.
Yeah.
Like you're just handing it over to circumstance or whatever, as opposed to owning it, and the good and the bad, the bad and the ugly, own it all.
Right.
And chances are you'll probably stay on top of your game more if you realize you got to own it all.
Yep.
And as men, we talk about this all the time. Like, men are created to lead. That's what we were created for, whether we want to or not. It may just be our wife. It may be our wife and kids. It may be our community. It may be a huge company, but we are created to lead. And, Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So if we're not willing to step into that role and be intentional about our personal daily habits and our personal extreme ownership, then we're failing, and we're creating a gap in society and in our world, because it's so important for us to fill. That said, one thing I did want to mention about both of your stories that I think is really important for our listeners, because I know there's dudes out there that can relate to what y'all have been through. There's too many. There's far too many that can relate to that. It's one of the reasons we're all here doing what we're doing, right? It's important for them to hear what both of y'all have done. And I can tell you, for JP, we're brothers. I mean, like, I know this dude better than anybody except his wife. And I know what kind of father he is. I know what kind of husband he is. I know what kind of leader he is, what he does with his career. I know what he does with Men Reforged and Shepherds of Men. Like, it would be hard to get any better. I don't know Larry as closely, obviously, but I'm a good judge of character, and I've seen what you've done with your movement, with the Dad Edge. And obviously, you've got a passion and a mission there. So you've taken that. My point of all that is, you've taken the things that were so hard and so difficult and so challenging and turned them into something that is so positive and that is changing lives by the thousands. So if you're a dude out there right now that has gone through that stuff, don't let that define you. Don't let that be your identity. Like, let that be the thing that is the reverse of the charcoal grill at Lowe's, that is saying, here, there's a lot of things not to do. Now all I need to do is tie in with some guys that know what to do, and I can apply that to my own life and how I'm teaching my kids and leading my wife and all the other important roles that I play. I mean, it really truly doesn't matter your circumstances. It just matters what you want to do with it. So thank you, guys, for being great examples. It's huge. And now I'm sitting here looking at the clock going, I feel like we just started talking, and unfortunately we have to stop talking. So maybe we can squeeze out another 2 minutes. So tell us, real quick, what's on the horizon for the Dad Edge right now?
So I would say the biggest thing on the horizon is I've got a book launch coming out on September 6th. I would definitely say it's my passion book, the one that, if you were to encapsulate all the lessons that I've learned through Dad Edge, through our mastermind, through my own coaches, through almost 1,000 podcast interviews from experts, I've put all that knowledge together into a book, and that's coming out on September 6th, and it's going to be called The Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood. Break old patterns, create the marriage and the legacy that you truly want.
That's an area that we're working on getting into right now as well. And working on is kind of a weak word for that, but that
was pretty lame.
Yeah, we're gonna write a book as well. We've heard that multiple times from multiple influencers that we've spoke to, and I think it's kind of a God thing, going, hey, stupid, write a book, write the book, get the book wrote, and stuff like that. So I think it's just, at first you look at it as kind of a daunting task, and then as you start to chip away at it, I would imagine it starts to come through a little bit more. So I think that's pretty cool. When did you say that you intend to release that?
So it's coming out September 6th. That's the launch date.
Nice.
And basically the book will encapsulate several different areas of fatherhood. So I mean, it really covers everything. So it's going to cover the premise and the problem that men face today, which, to be quite honest, a lot of it's distraction, it's busyness, it's the perception of, if I need help along the way of this fatherhood journey and marriage journey, I'm too weak. And basically what I call it in the book is the drift. It's that wash, rinse, repeat cycle that men are on, right? And it's not to insult men. It's just, we just don't know, quite frankly, any different. I mean, speak from a guy who's been in it. There's an entire section on how to create an extraordinary marriage. There's an entire section on being more calm and patient with your kids, as well as how to raise boys, how to raise girls with confidence. So how to raise strong, young young men, how to raise strong, young, confident young women. And then there's an entire section on leadership as a father. So I really put like literally my heart and soul into this book. And to be quite honest, it was the easiest thing I've ever written because I had so much of the information basically in our content in my mind, the things that I've been using over the past 7 or 8 years, the things that have worked, the things that haven't worked, and just bottled it up in this book. And the whole point of the book and the goal of the book is like literally a guy can take this book off the shelf, open up the table of contents and be like, that's exactly what I need right now is that chapter. And he'll be able to open it up, read it, get a story, get real strategy and a takeaway that he can implement right away.
I'm looking forward to that.
That's
I'll
one
be
for the
to
shelf.
carry
Yep.
Yep, for sure. So before we wrap up here, and again, we just appreciate your time so much. Tell everybody where they can find you, because since I butchered your name so badly at the front end, so maybe
Don't feel
we want
bad.
people to actually find where you are on social media and whatnot.
No, I actually expect it like all the time. Like I just expect
Maybe that's why it
it.
happened, Larry.
Yeah, I was putting the karma out there. The easiest thing to do is, I mean, like, listen, if you go to Google and just type in the Dad Edge, you'll find everything that we're doing. So I don't make it confusing. I used to, like when we were Good Dad Project and we were making the switch, like it's like, oh, we're gooddadproject.com and Dad Edge over here and Good Dad over here and Dad Edge. And so everything is the Dad Edge. So thedadedge.com, thedadedge.com. You can find everything there, our podcast, our resources. You mentioned there, I actually have 2 different free resources for marriage. One is an email series called 21 Days to an Extraordinary Marriage. The other one is 25 Intimate Conversation Starters. That one has been insanely popular. It's basically a video tutorial. It's not long, but it teaches you the psychology of why the questions you're probably asking your wife on a daily basis aren't creating any depth or intimacy. And then I give you the psychological reasons why generative questions do that. And then I give you a list of 25 that you can then go use in a PDF. We've got information on the Alliance, which if you're interested in taking your journey a step forward into our brotherhood, we've got it, all that there. On IG and all social handles, everything is the Dad Edge. If you want to connect with me personally on Facebook, I never shy away from that. You can find me at Larry Hagler. I'm kidding, Larry Hagler.
Well
played.
sir.
Well played, yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate it big time. And, something that we like to do while we're recording, so we can save this and remind you in case you ever change your mind, is we do have live events that we host every couple of months called High Carbon Experiences.
Oh, sweet.
And it is a full-on 15-hour day of like break them down, build them back up, just transformational type of day. Typically, we have 2 to 3 guest speakers come into that, and we would absolutely love to have you come in because we know how much of an impact you would have. It's an intimate setting. It's usually only like 20, 25 guys.
Oh, dude.
So
I would be honored. I would love that if you have me.
You heard it here first, folks. I will be saving this and sending it to you when we have the dates for the next one. Like, Larry, you said you would be honored to come in. So
I'm in, man. Let's do it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, you guys enjoy your trip. We thank you so much for being on here with us. We appreciate your patience with my vernacular, vocabulary, whatever you want to call it.
Good.
And for everybody else, you've been a part of the movement. Awesome, man.
Hey, thanks, Larry. Appreciate it. It was a pleasure meeting you. Hey, thanks for sharing that story. I know that's super impactful, and those stories really connect with people. And I commend you for what you're doing, because it would have been really easy for you to be a victim and say, oh, well, I am the way I am because of external circumstances and stuff. But you taking control of your life creates a really good example that we can point to, and I appreciate that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and I can tell you from just humble experience, I played that card for way too long.
Yeah.
Right. But hey, that's how we learn. So
that's right.
Yeah. Keep me up to date on your event, man. Obviously the small intimate event that you guys have. I would love that. I love doing that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. We've got one coming up June 25th, which is already set with everybody. So the next one would be like around late August, early September, probably.
Perfect.
So yeah, we'll definitely hit you up.
Okay.
Promise.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, brother.
All right,
Y'all travel safe.
Thanks, Larry.
Bye-bye.
See you.